Welcome back, YouTube. I've ran into some issues with the 806. Last time I told you about me cracking this cover. And I went through a bit of a hassle straightening that out. As you can see here, that is my independent PTO shaft, but there is one inside the rear end. When I started working on this, I ordered a different cover to throw on here, and I got to looking at it. This race, you're supposed to have these shims in here under the cover to get the correct preload on this bearing. Well, as what I was running into is with no shims at all, this race was actually below the surface of the cover there. So I couldn't actually get this race pushed in far enough to even take the slack out of the bearing, let alone put any preload on it. So I ended up pulling the whole thing apart again, splitting it right here, and not only splitting it there, but pulling off that cover, pulling out the main hydraulic pump, because there's a gear, a snap ring, and I'll put a picture up of it, but like a collar of sort, sleeve, with two bearing races pressed into it. Somebody suggested to me that because of the slop in the front end, that somebody forgot to put the bearing race in the back end, because you got a bearing here and a bearing back here on that shaft. Or as you can see on this shaft here, you got a bearing right here and a bearing right here. Even though this splits in here, that's where it actually, the two bearings are. So I pulled that out to try to look up in there. You can't see it without taking it all apart. So I split it here, ended up pulling the shaft out, going inside the transmission, the range box. I guess this is actually your 1 through 4. Your TA is kind of in here. TA is in there. So in through the range box, had a real fun time getting a clip out of that retainer that holds in the two races. Got that out, bearing was fine, race is fine, put that all back together. But here's the part why I have two shafts here. I don't know if this is going to show up on camera, but it's hard to see it myself. But right here, ever so little of a fracture. And with pulling this thing all apart and stuff, I didn't really feel that comfortable putting this back in, knowing that this thing might just dynamite. So this is actually original style PTO shaft with this sleeve on here. I'll try to put up a picture of the new style, but the new style just has a snap ring on here to retain that front bearing. Somebody suggested that this sleeve got pushed back. The new shaft is identical in length to this one. And for you 806 guys, specifically, for whatever reason in the manual, 806 is listed to have a different part number shaft here that doesn't cross to anything else through Case IH. But I found a shaft that the 706 and 1206 cross to, and I went and got that shaft. It's actually, that shaft is from the same tractor that I got my 3-point hitch from, a 3688. They used the same basic shaft, besides swapping from this to a snap ring, from a 706 to a 3688. Even like a 1586 used the same shaft. So the only difference I seen is the surface of the shaft here. Looked like it might have been possibly better on that one. There was heat treat on the ends that you could clearly see, and then it looked like the shaft itself was like shot peened, I believe they call it, where they shoot it with like steel balls to make the surface harder. So it should be probably a little bit more durable of a shaft anyways. But so back to this, they were identical, but I ruled that out. Well, there's a gear. This bearing actually sits on a gear here, and I think I have a picture of that I'll put up, but you gotta take the MCV out to get that gear out while the tractor's split. So I didn't take it completely out. I loosened all the bolts and I rocked it out of the way just enough to be able to get that gear out. And the only thing I could determine is that gear, somebody messed with at one time. It's the only thing I could determine. I didn't have another one to compare it to. I wasn't going to buy another one. So I ended up getting shim kit for 4 to 8.8 inch rear end, which the bearing itself they claim to use in that rear end. I had to bore the inside just a little bit. It wouldn't go over the shaft for some reason. But I put one of these shims in, and then I pressed the bearing on, and that actually, between the new bearing and that shim, how it sat on there, is actually a little bit thicker than what this should have been. So the new cover came with 2 shims, and I had the 2 shims that came with the tractor. So it just happens to be when I put all 4 shims in, there's just a little bit of preload on that bearing, and that's where it's going to be. Before, with no shims in here, you could rock the shaft up and down because it was just all slop. Wasn't even close. So that's what I'm gonna go with, is the 4 shims, which one of the new shims that came with the new cover is pretty dang thin. So they're not all the same size, it didn't seem like. So I got the old cover on here. This piece is actually supposed to be here, but I put it so the bearing race was equally clamped on, just to make sure everything was where it needed to be. And everything's turning nice. So I am gonna put this back together for good. And then I'm gonna fill this thing up with oil before I put it back onto the front end of the tractor, just to make dang sure that there is no more leaks. Because as you can see, this is pretty low in the transmission, with that crack being down in here. and that shaft rattling around in there just dumped all the oil out. So I'm actually kind of surprised that that happened as loose as this was in here, but I don't think what I did caused this, because like I said, this shaft has snap rings on it, and it was exact same length as this shaft. So we'll get her back together here. Well, let's give this a try. All snugged up. Still turns good. So, since I got this far apart, I might as well show you guys around this thing. High-low, reverse. Here's where the hydraulic pump sits. There's the gear and the snap ring that I had to take off. There's where it couples up with the rest of the shaft. Suction tube. That's what guys are always talking about. The O-ring goes off, or need to do an O-ring at the filter housing back there. That open hole there is where the hydraulic pump connects to, and it feeds into that hole. Here's the hydraulic pump. Doesn't really look a whole lot bigger than the other pump. Besides, it's made a little bit different. There you can see some of the TA parts. That looks like it has a pretty good, like it's lined up pretty good. Before, this gear would have been shoved so far forward to get the bearing tight that one, it wouldn't line up with the MCV gear. It would have been offset quite a bit, and two, would have been rubbing the case. There you can see the snap ring on this style. So I'm gonna go get this buttoned up, resealed, get the MCV all tightened up, hydraulic pump in, and then I'll start filling this thing up with oil, see if we got the problem fixed. One thing I wish I would have done the first time I split the tractor, right here, is these pins. These things made it so easy. When I split it the second time here, I already had the front off, so I used the cherry picker, had that hooked right here, and pulled it off and left the rear end on two jacks. And I had a heck of a time getting this apart Wasn't all that great the first time either, but when I was trying to go back together, no matter what I did, I couldn't get it lined up. So I went and got myself 4 of these. They're just regular bolts, grade 5. Cut the head off of them, and I put a slot in there in case they got tight on me, where I'd have to use a screwdriver to take them out. But with those 4 on there, one on each side on the top and one on each side on the bottom, that just slid together like butter. So easy. These are gonna get set aside for if I ever got to do this again. So let me get them covers on and all that stuff put back in, and we'll see how it works. So when I was assembling everything on the side over here, the 2 covers, or the reverse cover there, and the main hydraulic pump, I noticed that I did not have my snap ring on the PTO shaft, so I couldn't push the gear any further ahead. That meant to see the groove, so that meant that the shaft wasn't in all the way. So I came and I took this back apart, and I tapped on this a little bit, got my snap ring groove visible, put the snap ring on, and then I came back and I checked this, and where I had it with the 4 shims, the 2 thick and 2 thin, the gear was loose in here again. So I went and took all the shims out, went and snugged it up, and it preloaded the bearing. And so I put one of the thinnest shims in now, and I checked it. I can just barely move the bearing around if I stick like a pry bar in behind, up underneath on that gear. So, and I can see it wiggle a little bit on the shaft. The race isn't moving it any further. So I think now that's where it's supposed to be, which kind of made me wonder before with that big stack of shims on here, and you know, the situation I was starting out with originally with having this actually inset into the case and not getting any preload, and that shim I put in behind the bearing wasn't very thick. So this makes a little bit more sense. I didn't quite feel comfortable going shimless, so going with the thinnest shim here. I don't know, you guys probably aren't going to be able to see this, but if I go behind, yeah, it's not showing up on the camera, I doubt, but everything turns nice yet, and the shaft is actually seated in the rear bearing now. So put it back together like this now with one shim. I got everything put back together on the tractor that I took apart to fix this front bearing issue. I got the oil pretty close to where it's supposed to be, best I could determine. And besides what I spilled putting it in there, I don't see anything leaking out where it's not supposed to be. So next video should be putting the tractor back together. I'm going to put some of this stuff back together off camera, which I've already done on camera. So you'll be unsplitting the tractor. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell so you get notified. See you next time, guys. God bless.